On this episode of the Metal Command podcast, I revisit a classic heavy metal album, Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. I review the brand new Rage album, New World Rising, which is sitting right here next to me. There is a band that many of you may or may not know about, a very obscure band actually called Dragonsclaw that plays a great brand of hard rock and, a little bit of traditional metal. I'm going to review that album and talk a bit about that band, and I talk about the brand new Megadeth single, something I'm extremely excited for, Tipping Point. All of that coming up next on the Metal Command podcast.
You are listening to the Metal Command podcast.
Greetings and welcome back to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you. Always excited to come here and talk some heavy metal with everybody out there. And of course, if you do want to support this show and this podcast, please, by all means, hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. Hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. And if you follow the show on any other form of social media, by all means, please leave a like, a comment, or follow over there. For today's show, I'm going to talk in depth about this album by Rage, one of my longtime favorite heavy metal bands from Germany. As many of you know, I've had PV from Rage, not only on my radio show, but I had him on this podcast a couple years back as well. Really excited for this new Rage album, which is a little bit different than the last 2 or 3 albums they have put out, in my opinion. I'm going to do something a little different, something I'm going to start for this show. Is I'm going to start talking about classic heavy metal albums and a lot of back catalog stuff. Every once in a while, I'm going to throw a little bit of a retro review in there for 2 reasons. One, it's always fun to revisit these albums, and many times people like to revisit old records. That's one of the things that many of you have emailed me about wanting me to do. And the other thing is, anybody that's sort of new to the heavy metal genre, it's kind of good to talk about some of these albums and kind of point them into the direction of some great records that they can check, that they can listen to for the first time and check out for the first time. Because if you're new to this kind of music, there's a lot of great stuff out there. And it's great to point newer people into this music, into a specific direction. So I'm definitely going to be talking about Peace of Mind. This is actually my U.S. Picture disc. I'm going to talk a little bit about this picture disc in particular because there was something kind of unique about it. And this was issued for the United States and a few other select countries as well. I'm going to talk about Dragonsclaw, a band many of you may have not heard about, and I'll introduce you to their music a little bit. They play kind of a traditional heavy metal / hard rock style, and Giles Lavery sings for them, so I did interview him recently on the program, as you saw. And I'm going to talk about that album and play a clip from that interview where he pretty much tells the story of how the band came together. But first, something I've been anticipating, something I've been excited about, and something I was finally able to listen to, just like all of you did. There is a brand new Megadeth single out. It's called Tipping Point, and it comes out on their upcoming self-titled release, which comes out in January. I will have pre-order links in the show notes for this, but I am really excited for another Megadeth album, tentatively, of course, being their last. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that as well, and why I think it's probably going to be their last album. And man, what can I say? I mean, this is a band that really has impacted me a lot. Again, as I've said in a previous video, Megadeth was the first band that I ever said was my favorite band at the time. They were one of the bands that, besides Iron Maiden, that really made me fall in love with heavy metal music back in the early 90s. And Dave Mustaine was actually the first musician that I had on a poster on my wall. So I have a lot of very fond memories of Megadeth. Even having Dave Mustaine on my old radio show a few times. The guy was incredibly nice and incredibly cool to me. I know sometimes people give him a bad rap, and maybe he has a bad reputation with other people, but the guy was always incredibly nice to me. And this song, for me, checks all the boxes for a great Megadeth song. First of all, let me just comment on the fact that the mix on the song, before I get into the track itself, I think the mix and the production on this is far better than the last album that they put out, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. And The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, I thought was a great record. I didn't think it was quite as good as Dystopia, but I still thought it was very, very good. It had some very catchy songs in it, some very catchy riffs. And I think the mix and the production on Tipping Point is much better than the last Megadeth album, and probably on par with what the production and mix was on Dystopia, which I thought was absolutely incredible. Dystopia is probably easily one of my favorite Megadeth albums. You know, it could be a top 5 album, pretty close, but definitely an album I liked quite a bit. And I think Tipping Point is just another song that really is signaling to me that this next Megadeth album is going to be pretty incredible and pretty good. Both from the way the song is written and the production and just everything about it, it just screams, okay, this is probably going to be a great record. So what is the one thing about this song that I like the most? And I will tell you, it is the fact that it takes some twists and turns that I did not expect. So when the song starts, you hear these really catchy, awesome guitar riffs in the beginning. And at first I thought that was going to be like the main drive line of the song. And then those really cool riffs at the beginning stop and some really fast riffing comes in. And that's when Dave starts to sing. And then you have a chorus, of course. And, you know, they do that a couple times in the song. But I was not expecting him to play what was played after those beginning riffs. But, you know, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, man, I just know this song's going to be a banger. It's going to be good. And it definitely was. The guitar solos are absolutely incredible. And then it kind of goes into this kind of slower middle part, which, you know, Megadeth has done that in the past. But you have this like slower middle part. And then after that, it goes into those same guitar riffs that you hear at the beginning of the song. That was pretty much the intro. But the difference this time is there's actual vocals on those parts. And that's pretty much where the song ends, essentially. And I thought that was really cool. I thought it was great the way the song was structured and written. And it really threw a couple twists and turns I was not expecting. So if you haven't checked it out, I will put that song in the show notes. And I will put, of course, as I said before, a link to pre-order the song on the Megadeth website. A lot of really cool pre-order packages that they have up there that you can check out. But overall, I thought the song was really, really good. Definitely a great start to what's probably going to be a pretty damn good album. Now, many people are always speculating, is Megadeth really calling it quits? You know, every band says this is our last tour, this is our last album. And then they come back. They have like 10 comebacks. I mean, how many comebacks did Motley Crue have? How many comebacks has Kiss had? Slayer came back on a limited basis playing festivals. But generally speaking, anytime bands say something like this, you know, people get skeptical. And no doubt, I don't blame people for being skeptical, because I'm always I'm always skeptical when bands say this kind of thing. But there's just this weird feeling that I have, which tells me this is the end for Dave. As far as Megadeth goes, I don't know why, but the way, you know, watching interviews, watching some of the live performances, and just looking at the press release that was put out, I honestly think that this really is going to be their last album and their last tour. Now, who knows how long that tour lasts? It could last a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. But if I had to take a guess, my gut feeling says it's more likely the band is going to be done and retire than it's likely they will come back again and make another record. That's just a feeling I have, just a gut feeling of mine. Obviously, many of you are like, oh no, they're going to come back, and that may happen. But generally speaking, I don't know why I get this vibe, but I think this is it for Dave. I think the song is great. I really honestly think this record is probably going to be pretty good. And if you're going to go out on a high note, go out with a good record, go out with a great tour, and be done with it. And I think that Megadeth, if this song is any indication of what the album is going to sound like, I think Megadeth will go out on a high note. I really like the track. I'm also curious what you all think of the song, so leave a comment and let me know. I'm curious if you really do like the new Megadeth song, or if you don't like it. I've seen a couple comments saying, I hope the album's better. Okay. But I really haven't seen a lot of negative commentary on this track. Like, I remember when Super Collider came out, a lot of people were blasting that. And then that album came out and a lot of people hated it. So I don't see that kind of vibe with this new song. So really excited. Megadeth has a brand new song out. I can't wait for the album. I believe it comes out January 23rd, 2026. My pre-order is already in, and there's a pre-order in the show notes. Now let's move on to the next topic of discussion, a review of one of my favorite heavy metal bands, and that band, of course, is a band called Rage. Now, many of you have always heard me talk about the big four of power metal on Noise Records. It was always Halloween, it was Gravedigger, Rage, and Running Wild. Those are like the four early bands on Noise Records that were considered like the big four of German power metal, in the early days. Now, this is obviously well before Ed Guy or Blind Guardian had their first album, but these were four bands that came onto the scene that really made a big impact. And Rage, who started out as a band called Avenger in the very early 80s, Rage has put out an incredible amount of albums. I've actually lost count. I think it's close to 30. I could be wrong. And over the years, the band has changed its sound. Now, the interesting thing about this record is there are some elements in here that are a little bit more predominant than they have been in past albums. So if you've ever listened to Rage's catalog, okay, when you listen to the early stuff like Execution Guaranteed or, Secrets in a Weird World, PV is singing more in this kind of higher pitched tone. He's not singing with the grit in the low register type thing as much as, say, he does on some of the later stuff. And then the band, of course, evolved from this like speed metal to like power metal. They did the Lingua Mortis orchestra stuff on Ghosts and on 13. And then you have the album Speak of the Dead, which was kind of like half symphonic stuff, then half this regular straight up heavy metal. And they've really varied it up over the years. So why am I bringing that all up? Because this record has a little bit of a different sound to it. It's actually very, very heavy. The last album, After Lifelines, if you remember, it had 2 discs. It had a lot of different kinds of material on it, a lot of different types of songs on it. This one is a little more straight to the point. It just is. And it has a song, a 2025 version of a song called Straight to Hell at the end of this. It's off the album Welcome to the Other Side. The original version is. And I'm going to go into this record first, though, before I get into that re-recorded version. So when you get to the first half of this album, one of the interesting aspects of this is, number one, this album is a lot heavier than it normally would be. And when I say heavier, there's a lot of different interesting elements into it. So when you listen to the songs, for example, especially on the first half of the album, most of the songs stay in that 3 to 4 minute range. Literally the 3 to 4 minute range. Most of those songs are straight ahead, just straight ahead bangers. But the interesting part about it is when you're listening to the songs themselves and the main drive lines of the songs and the verses, you hear more thrash elements in that, and even some elements of metalcore in there. And then when you get to the chorus, you have the classic melodic type choruses that the band would normally play. Now, if you go to past records, I mean, you've heard a little bit of that, but it's a lot more predominant on this album for about the first half of the album. And then you start getting into songs like Fire in Your Eyes, which is track 8 on here. And then the rest of the album doesn't have as much of that and has more of the classic Rage sound. So, you know, when you get my favorite song in the album, it's called Beyond the Shield of Misery. It's actually technically the last song before the re-recorded song that they did. The riffing in that is absolutely incredibly awesome. Now, what do I think of the heavy direction that they've gone into? One of the major comments many people made was they don't like all the growling that Peavy does. You know, that was one of the criticisms I've seen about this album. Generally speaking, it doesn't bother me because his vocal style has sort of been evolving more towards that anyway. And probably the biggest criticism friends of mine have had was the production of the vocals and the growling portions. And I think that when you get into something like that with a band like Rage, who has that classic power metal sound on it, when people start commenting on that, it kind of turns folks off. I'm going to tell you folks that it doesn't really affect the album as much as you think it does. The growling and the low registered vocals that he doesn't really bother me because it fits in, especially on the first half of this album when you're playing more thrash metal riffs and you're playing more of this metalcore kind of style, you know, in the main drive line and verses of the song before you get to the chorus parts. But it's like classic Rage, but it's a lot heavier and a lot more aggressive than what they normally would do. Not to mention the fact all of these songs are pretty straightforward. The longest track on here is Fear Out of Time. And it's 5 minutes and 17 seconds. I'm looking at it right now. But everything else is 3 to 4 minutes. So I like the extra aggression that they have in the music. I think it's a different direction from what they normally would do. They've had songs with those elements in it before, but this album has a lot. It basically dominates this album and its overall sound a lot more than, say, a lot of the previous stuff that has come out. Now, the album Straight to Hell, or that's not the album Straight to Hell, but the song Straight to Hell 2025. That the original version of that song came off of an album called Welcome to the Other Side. If many of you remember that, it came out, let me look here. When did that come out? 2001. Yeah, 2001. I had 17 songs on it. That album, from a production standpoint, was a huge disappointment for me. I think that was the album that came out after Ghosts, which came out, I believe, 1999, 2000, somewhere around there. And the production on Welcome to the Other Side, the songs were pretty good, but the production was lacking. So there is a re-recorded version of that song at the end of this record that I think is actually very, very good. I thought they did a great job. I mean, personally, I kind of go back to what Iron Savior did with the Reforged albums, where they re-recorded a lot of old stuff. The re-recordings of Iron Savior's songs off of the album Dark Assault sound a million times better than that album. That album really didn't have a great production on it. And I kind of feel the same way. I pretty much feel the same way about Straight to Hell 25. I think that this particular version sounds better than the original one. And you don't really hear me say that too often. But that's what it is, folks. That's how I feel about the record. Overall, if I'm comparing it to the Rage catalog, I'm going to need more time with it. Is it a top 10 album? Probably not. Do I like the album? Yes. I think it's very good. It's very aggressive. Peavy kind of sings more in his lower register than he typically does. And, again, it's a quality record. Rage is one of those bands where you like the records when they come out, but there are some you like a little better, and there's some you don't like as much, but you like all or most of them. There's a couple albums by the band that I'm not really that into, but this one is definitely a great record, and I think they did a really good job with keeping it kind of short and straight to the point as far as the types of songs on it. So that's where I sit on it. It's obviously an incredible power metal album with some more aggressive elements in it. And if you are used to some of the more classic styled Rage songs, it's going to be a little different for you. So with that said, I'm going to go into the break. After the intermission, I am going to talk about the album Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden, and of course a band that many of you may not have heard about called Dragonsclaw, and their new album Moving Target. All of that coming up after the break on the Metal Command podcast. Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Since 1998, I have hosted this show, which started off as a radio show and, of course, is now in the world of podcasting. That's right. I've hosted this show since 1998, and I've had the privilege of speaking to so many great bands and artists over the years, and I appreciate the following and support I am receiving from all of you. The show has definitely grown a lot over the last year, and I would love your support. If you have not yet done it, please hit the subscribe button here on YouTube and follow the show on any other form of social media. Now, back to the second half of this episode. Welcome back to the Metal Command podcast here after the break. Let's get into the second half of this show. I'm going to start off the second half of the show by doing a little retro review. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a lot of these. Many people out there have emailed me asking me about specific albums that may have come out 5 years ago, 25 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. I get daily emails asking me what I think about some of the classic albums in the heavy metal genre. And since I get these questions, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about these records on the show, because I'll be answering emails for the next week if I answered everybody with my detailed opinion about each album. So today's retro review album, and I'm going to be doing more of these on the program, is going to be Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. That's right. Classic Iron Maiden album. Definitely one I would recommend to newer fans of the band. And the reason I'm bringing this album as a retro review on first is because this is the most recent one people have asked me about. Now, I don't know why that is, but since it's out there and those emails were coming to me, let's start off with this record, which I love immensely. I'll give you my own personal story about it and give you a few fun facts about the record as well. So this is my US picture disc version of the album, and I'm going to get into what's special about this particular pressing of the album, because this is an original issue, picture disc issue, for the United States and a few other countries outside of the UK. But Peace of Mind is a very interesting album because for me, when I was getting into Iron Maiden, the first two albums I ended up getting were Power Slave and Peace of Mind. Two very good albums to start off with. Power Slave was the first one I listened to. And then the very next day after buying Power Slave, I found Peace of Mind on CD somewhere. Some music store had it. I don't remember. This was back in the early 90s, right around the time Bruce had left the band, is when I subsequently ended up getting into Iron Maiden after that. And so this would have been about 1993, late 93. Yeah, it would have been late 90s. It would have been late 1993 when I really started getting into Iron Maiden. So I ended up getting Peace of Mind and Power Slave, both really, really great records. Now, for those of you that have ever asked me what are my favorite Iron Maiden albums, I could tell you Number of the Beast is my favorite, probably followed by Killers, and then I probably would have, it's tough. Somewhere in Time, I think, would be number 3 for me. But it's pretty close because Peace of Mind and Power Slave would definitely be in the conversation as well. But this is a great record. Now, this is the follow-up to Number of the Beast, where I think the band and the songwriting they had collectively became a little bit more refined. It's also the first album that Nickel McBrain played on. So there are definitely some significant changes in the band, as far as the rhythm section is concerned. You had a new drummer, Bruce Dickinson. For those of you that may or may not remember or know this, he really couldn't take any credit for any kind of songwriting he might have done in Number of the Beast because he was still, under a contract, but he was able to do so on this record. And he definitely did make his mark from a songwriting perspective. But this is a more refined record, not as crazy or aggressive as, say, Number of the Beast or Killers were both, but definitely a very, very good album. And interestingly enough, one of the B-sides on this album received a lot of airplay in the States. So you had a couple B-sides. I'll show you the singles. We have the Trooper single right here, as you may see. And it had a single called Cross-Eyed Mary. Now, why am I bringing that up? Why is Cross-Eyed Mary, a Jethro Tull cover, so significant? Because it received a lot of U.S. radio airplay after the album had come out. I'm going to assume this single probably made it to a radio station somewhere, and radio stations started playing this cover. And the record label at the time really wanted to press subsequent versions of Peace of Mind with that song at the end of the album. They wanted to put it on the album itself. The band really didn't want to do that because they felt that it ripped off fans who had already gone out and bought the album. So it never happened. However, it did happen in a very limited fashion because what they did was in the United States and a few countries outside of the UK, they put out a picture disc version of the album. This is an original pressing of that. And on the picture disc itself, at the very end, you have Cross-Eyed Mary as the very last song. It's right there. They put it on the album in a very limited fashion. So they kind of put it on the album, but they really didn't. They put it on the special picture disc edition, which was found outside of the UK and was obviously something that came out here in the US. Apparently, people love this picture disc version of the album. When vinyl was kind of going out and CDs were the thing, in the late 90s, you're going to laugh at how much I paid for this. I paid $20 for this picture disc. It was still sealed when I ended up getting it. Obviously, it's probably worth a lot more to a collector, but definitely Cross-Eyed Mary was a pretty big song for the band here in the States, and it was a cover. A lot of people forget about that, but it was definitely something that happened. They also had another single, and this is another original EMI pressing from Germany, just like the Trooper single was, Flight of Icarus. You had the Montrose cover, I've Got the Fire. If you remember, they had a live version of that on that came out as a B-side for the first self-titled Iron Maiden album. So those are the two singles. Those are the B-sides. Now, as far as the album goes itself, what do I think about it? Well, it's interesting because I had not listened to this album for quite some time. And the picture disc again, I just think it's cool. The front of this is really cool. But I had not listened to this album in quite some time. So I had obviously bought the vinyl reissues of the album, of all the Iron Maiden albums that came out. I think it was like 2015 or 16 or 17. I don't remember when that was. 2018, I think. And it's an incredible record. It's a little bit different than a lot of the records they've put out. So like Where Eagles Dare, I think there's a lot of underrated songs on this too, by the way, that really don't get into the set list that much, but I think some of them should. So Where Eagles Dare, the first song I think is awesome. I remember them doing, I know they've done it on a recent live album, and it has made its way into the set more recently. And I do remember hearing the live version that they played on the Real Dead One live album that came out back in 1993. But Where Eagles Dare, I think, is one of the more underrated Iron Maiden songs that exists. I mean, they just, again, for me, definitely an absolutely incredible track. It gets overlooked a lot. I know it's a little longer than most of the songs on the album, aside from Revelations, but Where Eagles Dare is an absolutely incredible song, and I think it's probably, for me, and this is a personal preference, the most underrated song on the album. And then you have the song Revelations. Absolutely incredible song. It's been in the set several times over the years. It's on the album Live After Death. You see Bruce Dickinson going on stage, singing it, and he's got a guitar, strapped to him as well. Revelations is incredible. Definitely one of the best songs in the band's catalog. Now you have Flight of Icarus. Now, interestingly enough, Flight of Icarus was really the first song that I really fell in love with on the album. I loved the chorus. Obviously, I showed you the single. The chorus of that song really is what caught me and really drew me into the record. First couple tracks I thought were really good, but the catchiness of the Flight of Icarus song itself was really, really great. And it's a song they've done quite a bit over the years. Die With Your Boots On. Very highly underrated track. Not one that they really play a whole lot. I don't know if they've played it that much recently, but I do know that on the Live After Death, they did play that song. I believe they played it if you have the Live at the NEC, Made in England. I know it's on that live album, I believe. And it's a song that's made its way into the set here and there over the years. But I think that is a great track. One that I think it would be nice if they played it a little bit more. I think it deserves a little bit more recognition for what it is. And it's definitely like when most of my friends talk about this album, they point to that track and the last song in the album, To Tame a Land, as being like what they think are the most underrated tracks. For me, it's Where Eagles Dare, but Die With Your Boots On is definitely a great song. You have The Trooper. Again, I mean, this is a classic. They play this probably all the time. I mean, it's in almost every set the band plays. And it's an incredible track. Bruce has the big British flag that he runs across stage with. And I've always loved it. The artwork on the single, I think, is absolutely incredible. I have that t-shirt actually somewhere. I actually have a coffee mug with it, and I have a hat with it. So definitely, it's one of my favorite Eddies. And I'm actually going to be doing a show on my top 10 Iron Maiden Eddies. That's going to be one that's going to be a lot of fun to do. But definitely a great song. Now we get into the second half of the album, essentially. And this is where things get a little bit interesting. This is where you have songs that, most people don't talk about. So we get into the song Still Life. I actually like this song quite a bit, and they did play it live a few times in the past. I know it's on the Made in England live album. It made it onto a live single as well, and I thought it was an interesting song to throw into the set list, but it's definitely not one people typically talk about. But I think it's actually one of the stronger songs on the album. We go down to Quest for Fire. And again, I'm going to say Quest for Fire and Sun and Steel, for me, are the two weakest songs on the album. Quest for Fire is cool. I like the chorus. I think it's catchy. But I would say that and Sun and Steel are probably the two weakest tracks on this record. Not very many people talk about these songs. If you ask most people that like this album, they will probably point at Sun and Steel and Quest for Fire as being two of the weaker tracks. Not always, but most people that I know typically will say that when you bring up the Peace of Mind album. And then, of course, the last song, the song that most of my friends claim in their minds, is the most underrated track on the album, To Tame a Land. And I actually think that track is very good. I mean, there's even a really great cover that Dream Theater did of this song that is absolutely incredible. I don't remember what... I'd like to say... I don't remember which album had it now, but in the box set, it might be Black Clouds and Silver Linings. I could be wrong. One of the albums that I have, if you have the box set version of it, there is a disc where they do covers, and one of them is To Tame a Land by Iron Maiden. And it actually, Dream Theater sounds really good doing it. James LaBrie really pulled the song off really well. I think they were live tracks too, if I remember correctly, but I don't remember now because I only listened to it once. But To Tame a Land is what many fans that I know claim is probably one of the most underrated Iron Maiden songs of all time. And then, of course, at the end of this, you have the Jethro Tull cover that is on the picture disc version of the album. And again, it received a lot of radio play for a lot of people, for the band here in the United States. So a lot of people don't remember that. If you're outside of the USA, you may not know that. But generally speaking, I would definitely say that it's one of the better B-sides the band has ever put out. So where do I rank Peace of Mind into the Iron Maiden catalog? And that's a good question. I mean, for me personally, prime Iron Maiden, and this is my personal preference. Most people that I know, the prime years for Iron Maiden are Number the Beast through Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. That's probably where most fans probably have like the best run of albums for them. For me personally, prime Iron Maiden starts with the first album because I love the first two Paul Di'Anno albums all the way through Seventh Son. And after that, they have albums that are pretty solid, pretty good. They've had some great songs, but the first album through Seventh Son is, for me, it's prime Iron Maiden. Now, I gave you my top 3 Iron Maiden albums. If I were to kind of right now go through and rank them, it would be Number the Beast, number 1. Number 2 would be Killers. Number 3 would be Somewhere in Time. Number 4 would be Power Slave. And I would have Peace of Mind right at number 5. That's where I would have that record. And then, it would probably go Seventh Son after that, and then the self-titled album after that. So Peace of Mind's in the top 5. It's still an incredible album. There are some instances where I listen to some of these songs on Live After Death, for example, like Flight of Icarus. I like the live version of Revelations probably a little bit better than the studio one. Just my own personal preference. But generally speaking, it's definitely a top 5 album in the band's category. So if you are new to Iron Maiden, if you're looking to explore their music, this should probably be one of the first 5 albums that you buy from the band, because I think it's incredible. So I'm interested to hear what all of you think. What do you think of Peace of Mind? Is it your favorite album? Where do you have it ranked? Where would you put this in the Iron Maiden catalog? I mean, for me, it's number 5. It's definitely top 5. It's a great record. Going back and listening to it again was really such a joy and a pleasure to just listen to it all the way through today and really get a chance to really reminisce about how much I loved this album, especially when I first heard it. And that's where I sit. That is your retro review for this episode. And I have a whole bunch of retro reviews planned, so don't worry. Lots of cool stuff coming down the road. But where does it rank for you in the Iron Maiden catalog and the discography? And what are some of your favorite songs on it? Leave a comment. I would love to know that. Now, to end off the show on a positive note, I want to talk about a band that I've been listening to that I like quite a bit that many of you may not know about. So, one of the things I like about this show is for the last 27 plus years, I have been able to check out bands and new music all the time. I do that a lot, believe it or not. I know there was an article with Igor Cavalera talking about how you have a lot of people are too lazy to listen to new stuff. And in some respects, he's kind of right, but I still like to check out new stuff. Even if I don't like it, at least I checked it out. There are bands that I end up getting into that are just absolutely incredible. And this one is actually really cool. So this is a band called Dragonsclaw. Mainly guys from Australia performing on this album. Mark Zonder from, obviously, as you may know, from A to Z, and of course played in Fate's Warning. He plays drums on it. This is a really cool album. It's a nice mix. The album's called Moving Target. It's a nice mix of like traditional kind of power metal-ish type stuff mixed with some hard rock. I wouldn't say it's a complete power metal album because it does have some of those elements in it, but it also has some more hard rock elements with it as well that I really like. But there's an interesting story behind this band, and I'm going to play you an interview clip from a recent interview I did with the singer in this band, Giles Lavery, who obviously, as you know, sings in Warlord, sings in Alcatraz, and he works for Brave Words Records. He's the A&R guy. But Giles sings on this album, and I believe this is the second album. I could be wrong, but he talks about the story of how this band came together. Check out this clip.
We have a brand new album by a band called Dragonsclaw. Name of the album is called Moving Target. And then, of course, he is singing on an upcoming Alcatraz release. And Warlord's got a new, release out there as well. So welcome back to the show. Nice to see you yet again. And let's talk about this Dragonsclaw album. I think it's very, very good. And give us a little background on this band, because it's not a very well-known band, but definitely when it comes to the traditional metal style of music, I think it's very good.
Well, thank you. It's a bit of a long story. I'll try and make it as short as possible. The guitar player of Dragonsclaw, Ben Thomas, lives in Australia, and at the time that we put this together, we both lived in Sydney, Australia. Now, he was introduced to me via a mutual friend of ours, actually, Stu Marshall. And he said to me and to Ben, you guys should get together. You might be able to do something. And, I went, yeah, okay, cool. And Ben sent me some pieces of music, and I spent a couple of weeks with him. This was back in 2010 or something.
Yeah.
And after a couple of weeks, went round to his home studio at his house, and we started recording because he had a setup there. Recorded what I'd written, see if he liked it.
Sure.
He did. And, every sort of Sunday we started recording, we would do one or two songs. And interestingly enough, the first album, Prophecy, we had that done in a couple of months. We put we put a couple of the songs online. I don't quite know. Or we put some snippets of them online somewhere. I don't quite know how it got around, but it came to the attention of William Samus, obviously the founder, co-founder, and guitar player of Warlord.
Yeah.
And he contacted me. I think and he said, wow, I really like your voice. Wow, that's a cool band. And I was like, first of all, how did he even get to hear this stuff? And then not long after that, it was within about 3 weeks, a Greek label called Archie and Steel asked if they could make a deal with us for the first album. And we're like, this is kind of cool. Like out of nothing, we thought we'd probably make a couple hundred CDs just for like people locally in Australia or something. All of a sudden, people on the other side of the world were interested. So we put that record out, Prophecy, and there was a little buzz going on there for a minute. And, it charted on the Burn charts in Burn magazine in Japan at like number 6 on the import charts. And just all this sort of stuff started happening. Bill asked me to sing for Warlord on the Holy Empire tour. I'm just condensing this into kind of point by point things.
Yeah. Yeah.
We kind of were, we were getting a lot of great reviews in Europe and things like that. Subsequently, I actually moved over here to Germany. Before I did, we actually worked on our follow-up album, Judgment Day, which came out 2013, which coincided with my live work with Warlord and me recording the live album with Warlord and some stuff on the Holy Empire album. So we were sort of 2 albums in. I moved over here. It got really sidelined with my management company, managing bands such as Raven and Girls School and Onslaught and et cetera, and everything else I was doing, running labels and working on extensive reissue projects for bands like Riot and things like that. And just really, I didn't sing for a long time. And then during COVID, I started feeling the urge to do so again. And that's when me and Mark Zonda reactivated Warlord, and we did that record. Sure. And we've done a couple of follow-up sort of side pieces to that record, with re-recordings and a few exclusive tracks. Jack Starr asked me to sing on his record. That was cool. And that's done okay. It's done pretty good. And then the Alcatraz thing came about. I mean, I've been working with Alcatraz since, and Jimmy Waldo and all that since, within all that management period there. And then it just sort of inevitably, I ended up being the singer. So, we've got an album of re-recordings of old tracks plus two new songs coming out later this year, and we're working on a new studio album now. But amongst all of this, I said to Ben, because we've been writing this Dragonsclaw album for years, it would move forward about an inch every year, and then I would get really busy and have to go on the road with something, either as to a manager or even in more recent years singing and performing, etc. But I needed a break at the end of last year. Before Christmas, I told all my bands, everyone, I said, unless someone or something is on fire or gushing blood, I don't want to know about it. I need to be left alone for 3 weeks. I really need a break to recharge.
I've been there. That's where I'm at right now, actually.
Yeah, you can relate. And I just, 4 days in, I was bored.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what do I do? And then I started poking around the Dragonsclaw folder on my Dropbox and I listened through to the songs that we had so far. And these are really good songs. And I've got a good head of steam now built up with the Warlord Free Spirit Soar album, the Warlord Ashes to Archives release. We've got some new stuff coming out, the Jack Starr record. I'm now the singer of Alcatraz, and we've done 2 American tours. We're working on new studio stuff, some of which you'll hear later this year. And I thought this would be if there was ever a perfect time to kind of slot Dragonsclaw into that priority list of, if people are interested in what I'm doing, this is a big part of it. And I wanted to remix the first album and reissue the first 2 Dragonsclaw albums, which is, they've been remixed, or one of them's been remixed, they've both been remastered. One's been remixed, one's been remastered. They're coming out next year as a package. But this year, it was all about getting the 3rd album finally finished. And I wrote Ben late last year when I was on my 3-week break in December, and I said, let's do it. And I think, he's always kind of been around and ready. And I think he replied back, like, if you want, like, almost as if to say, like, if you really want to do it this time, yeah, let's do it. And Thomas Megler, who's become a great friend of mine and someone who I can always rely on to mix and master and pretty much anything I need, he's kind of there for me as far as, engineering and studio stuff. Mm-hmm. I sent him Ben sent him all the tracks. We finished the last bits of recording. The album was virtually finished. It was just, we needed to finish it, like the final vocals, final things, everything like that. Because we've been writing for a long time. And I got him sent all the stuff, all the sessions to start mixing. And it's tough when you're opening up a song session that hasn't been touched since a couple of years. You kind of go, right, I've got a snare drum track for most of this, but there's no bottom snare drum track. Do we have that? I had to contact Mark Zonda, had cut the drums for this album a while ago now, back when we were still putting down final tracks. So I had to email him, do you still have that snare track? Yes, you do. Okay, great. And there was all these sort of piecing it all back together again. Because when you put something down for a couple of years or intermittently throughout a longer period of time, you forget where you were at. Unless you have 100 post-it notes, you sort of go, okay, I still needed to do that part. I still need to sing that harmony vocal. You have to reacquaint yourself with the whole thing, like any project that gets put away. And so that took a bit of pulling together, and Thomas was really valuable in just going, okay, let's get this science project together, figure out what we need to record still, figure out what's missing, figure out what needs to be, done. So we did that. And come the new year, we had the record. And I was like, unbelievable, we're finished, and it sounds fantastic. And I spoke to High Roller Records, who I have a great relationship with. And I said, I've got this other band, Dragonsclaw. And, Jimmy Waldo from, I sort of told them about the Warlord connection, because obviously they have success with our Warlord stuff. So I said, well, Mark Zonda plays drums and Jimmy Waldo plays keyboards on this. So if nothing else, there's 3 Warlord members on this. Because you never know what labels are going to be interested in or not interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And, me and Ben are the core of the band. Me and Ben Thomas, the guitar player, and then there's his brother, Aaron Thomas, on bass. But, Stefan at High Roller was more than happy to put it out. He was like, yeah, let's do this. This is great stuff. And which was nice to hear. And from all reports, it's doing very well, which is surprising me. But again, maybe the time is right. I mean, the response has been really, really good to for the record. And I'm glad that you like it too. But that's kind of the whole story.
Man, that's a pretty condensed version too.
That's like ridiculously condensed. I mean,
yeah, I gotcha.
People care about the record. They don't necessarily need to hear that. Like in 2018, we cut guitars for the song 4, and then we can,
Yeah, no, I got you.
And that is Giles Labrie giving you the story of the band Dragonsclaw. It's a really cool project. There's a song on this album called Ghost Soldiers that I absolutely, in my opinion, is probably my favorite song on the album. But when you go down the list of some of these songs, they got a song called Cry Wolf that is very good. And it's a great mix. And I'm giving you songs to check out by the band, which I'm sure are up streaming somewhere. I got to be honest, it's a nice mix of power metal and traditional metal. Giles has more of that like traditional heavy metal sounding voice. But to be honest with you, I think this is an album that you should definitely check out. I have never really listened to the previous album. I did. I don't remember much from it. What I do remember is that this new album by Dragonsclaw, Moving Target, is a lot better than the previous album. But the guitar work is very good. It's just a fun record to listen to. And if you're looking for some really great hard rock / heavy metal, traditional heavy metal, from a different band, definitely you should check this out. I'll put a link in the show notes to some of their music so you can check that out. Well, that about does it for another episode of the Metal Command podcast, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Again, I always appreciate your support. And I thank you for watching / listening. Stay metal. Hey, it's Tony here from the Metal Command Show. I want to thank you for watching this portion of the program. Since 1998, I have hosted the show, which started off as a radio program and is now into the podcast format. So I want to thank you for watching and or listening. And if you want to support the program, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any content. A lot of you have been supporting the show and really, really helping this show grow, and I cannot do it without all of you. So with that said, thanks for watching. Stay metal.